Brenda? No, I'm good. John?
Yeah. Here's something I've been thinking about and talking to some people about, and I'd like us to think about and maybe consider moving when this meeting is. It's been the first Wednesday of the month for a long time, and it strikes me increasingly, well, from my own perspective, it's often a day or a couple of days after the closing of the previous month, which makes it tougher to, I've had to sometimes give estimates on the year-to-date. It's awkward. The month ends, and sometimes this is on the first, second, or third. And then also, this doesn't happen that often, but as we just went through, it is occasionally the day after an election. In fact, last year, it was the day after an election. Some people had to get sworn in that day and were told they wouldn't have to. So, I just wonder if we want to maybe look at having it the second Wednesday of the month, and then that puts us more in the middle of when the two cities meet, and just sort of...
So, they're all noticed out, or planned and, published for the rest of this year, right? So we could look at that in our goal setting and priority setting session, possibly.
If I can, something that will be on the December agenda will be that tentative list of township board meetings for 2020.
Okay.
So what I would say is, I think it's fantastic for you all to discuss now and discuss as much as you would all like, but for your information, it's a plan that staff will bring a tentative list to you all in December, and then you all are more than welcome to amend that, and then when that's approved, that's what will be posted in terms of the regular meetings for 2020.
That works great, because I was going to suggest rather than do it in strategy, because it's not that strategic, is maybe adjust the December meeting for the next calendar year. So that we can certainly change what's been posted, so that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Stacy?
No, thanks.
You're good? Ben? Good. I am good as well. So we will move on to the manager's report.
Thank you. I'll try to do this relatively quickly. We do have a couple things that I think would be important to spend some time on, though. But first off, more in terms of announcements, the township office will be closed on Monday in observance of Veterans Day. So just as a reminder to you all and to the public, the office will be closed on Monday, November 11th. As John mentioned, the on-site aspects of the annual financial audit took place October 21st to 23rd. We'll work with the auditors to prepare a presentation for the board upon the report's release. I do want to thank John and then our deputy clerk, Lori Babinski, again. This year going through the audit, I know it was a new position. I think all three of us were in new positions from previous years, so I really appreciate everything they've done. I think it's going to be a learning experience for all of us, but from the staff perspective, I look forward to bringing the auditors in and having that report presented to all of you. A goal priority setting workshop was scheduled for Saturday, December 14th. I recognize that Saturdays may not be the perfect time for everybody, but I am very appreciative of you all making that work. I think it's going to be a big step forward for us in talking about priorities and goals for the next year. It'll tentatively take place between 8 a.m. and noon, and there will be more information to come. Staff's currently looking at venues. As a reminder, with that being the entire board, that will be a public meeting. It will be a special meeting. It will be posted. The public will be welcome. It will be a workshop for the township board, so the facilitator will be working directly with the township board, but that doesn't take away from it being a public meeting that people are more than welcome to observe. Staff has been following up with AMR regarding the updated agreement. There's been some delay. AMR's gone through some internal turnover. I think as an organization we can be very empathetic for that. We know some of the challenges, but staff's continuing to follow up on that, and they continue to remind me that ambulance service has not been interrupted regardless of that turnover taking place for them. Staff's worked with legal counsel to determine that it'd be a good practice for the township board to annually adopt a resolution addressing our special assessment district sewer special assessment district that we reviewed that it is not necessary, because of the debt aspects of that special assessment, which leaves the number of light districts we have, off the top of my head, I believe we have 6. But because those were already collected this year, that's a practice if the township board is interested in. Both legal counsel and myself would recommend we begin that in the 2020 tax year. But I know that was something that several of you were looking for on this agenda. That is why it's not on there, but it has been looked into thoroughly. Moving on to Lakeshore Drive, as several of you have mentioned, over the last couple weeks with the high water levels, high winds and storms of the fall, there's been a significant increased erosion. We are now watching 10-plus spots that are at increased risk for washouts, and there have been a number of steps that have been put into place to try to be as proactive as we can in this situation. One of those being the township called a meeting last week of many key stakeholders in the area. It was mentioned before by some folks in the public comment, but that was a crucial first step in bringing people together. I think the large attendance at that meeting really showed that this was a right time to have this conversation, that there were many parties wanting to get engaged, not only township specific, but also countywide. I know this has really stepped off countywide efforts to start to pay attention, not only on the 2.5-mile stretch we have here in Saugatuck Township, but also in Ganges, Casco, and all the way down to the north side of South Haven. But a couple highlights there are approximately 10 segments that are being watched for potential damage daily now by the road commission. I want to recognize Dana. He's been going above and beyond in his various roles, both with the township and as a resident, but he deserves a lot of credit for everything he's been doing in terms of trying to help people coordinate and understand really to the degree this is an issue. In terms of next steps, and then I'll do my best to answer any questions you all have. Next steps are really going to revolve around coordination, and that's going to be continuing to have the various agencies that are all going to need to work together to find a solution that involves local governments like the township and the county, involves emergency management organizations at the county level, Allegan County Road Commission, emergency services here at the township, and it also involves homeowners associations and residents in the area continuing to communicate and work together. I'd also like to point out a communication from Chief Greg Janik that I received late today that was put in front of all of you. Chief Janik has also been going above and beyond in terms of trying to ensure the emergency response aspects are covered. There's going to be a meeting next Monday that he's putting together of the police chiefs. And I would just like to recognize, again, Dana, Chief Janik, and I can't name everyone who is really recognizing the severity of this issue and starting to have the conversation to take steps. I want to tell you all very directly, I do not have the answer. I don't think anyone has the answer on what needs to be done, but I think as everyone said, having these conversations, communicating, and the cooperation aspects of not only the emergency response that Chief Janik has really been leading at this point, but also the short, the mid, and the long-term access solutions are things that are going to continue to be discussed moving forward. I'll do my best to answer any questions you have about that, and then I have one other topic to cover with you all. But are there any questions about that or anything I can?
I have a question on the meeting that Chief Janik's putting together on November 11th. Because he mentioned having managers and chief elected officials there.
Yes.
Is he aware that the township's closed? Are you attending, or?
Yeah, I'll be going in. I think in a situation like this, if we are going to spend time trying to figure out perfect dates for everybody, nothing's ever going to get done. I just mean,
I know emergency people work 24/7.
I will make myself available to be there. Yes.
But he does mention elected officials yet.
Yes.
I don't know if any have been invited, and it is a federal holiday, that's all.
Sure.
Are there any houses in danger at this point, or is it just the road at this point? I mean, I've seen other places with houses destroyed and...
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, we're not to that point with houses, but I think one of the largest situations we're dealing with right now has to do with access. And access on several different accounts, not only emergency service access in the immediate, but also, as we've had some folks mention, the egress to their homes, both in the short and in the long term. I don't know if that answers your question. I think access is the largest situation we're trying to deal with right now, but that doesn't attempt to minimize that we've got parts of this road that are potentially unstable, and there are immediate, health and safety risks associated with that are being considered as well, and that's why I can tell you I am reassured to hear that these approximately 10 areas that have been identified through Michigan State Police flyovers and drone footage through various organizations, to my knowledge, are being inspected daily.
It's not close at this point to...
It is not close.
I mean, do you see that happening other than people that live there?
Potentially, if this erosion is to increase, but that would largely be a decision of the Allegheny County Road Commission. I think they'd be welcome for feedback, but again, I would trust their judgment when it comes to, again, being road experts.
There are a couple, maybe literally a couple, but there are a couple of homes that are on the lakeside that are down below.
And those homes, and I can't say for certain, but in the little bit of conversation I know we've had, those homes tend to have shore protection, which puts them at a little bit of a different situation. That's another piece of this that staff and the others involved are looking at, is the difference of parts of the bluff that have shore protection as opposed to those that don't. Is that something we need to be looking at moving forward? Right now, I would say we are very much in a damage assessment, information gathering mode, but I can tell you with a lot of certainty that the township staff is dedicated to continuing to have these conversations and see what we can do moving forward. There's going to be a lot more communication that's going to have to occur. If I can move on to one more topic, and I'm more than happy to go back to that, again, not to spend too much time, but I put this together just at the end of the day today. I know I begin to have several conversations with many of you about funding, and I know with the trail resolution in this packet, it sparks other conversations about funding on a much broader level. So I put this together just at the end of the day today, so please take it with a grain of salt, but at the same time, I hope it starts to put some things into perspective for us. But as you can see here, this is the township's budgeted general fund revenue. And I apologize, that's not the greatest. And if this is something the board would like us to look more into, we obviously can do this. But the township, when you look at our revenue, it's broken up into 5 major categories. Property taxes and tax administrative fees can almost be put together. And if you do that, you can really see we've got 3 sections that almost look like thirds. A third of our budget general fund revenue comes from property taxes or tax administrative fees. A third come from state revenue sharing, and another third comes from miscellaneous permits, fees, miscellaneous revenue, and also a not insignificant chunk comes from transfers from our fund balance and from other funds. I would like to bring this all to your attention because in my professional experience, some of this is not sustainable. What I mean by that is such a large chunk of our budget coming from transfers from other funds and from our general fund, but more importantly, when you look at the potential of recessions, you run the risk of permits and fees and state revenue sharing decreasing significantly. And when you look at what a large chunk of our budgeted general fund revenue this is, it stands out to me as something we should pay more attention to. I do not show this to all of you to be an alarmist. I don't think we're to that point yet. Again, the township has a healthy fund balance. We are very financially solvent. I think this is something for us to consider moving forward. The other reason I say that is, and again, I apologize for how last minute I put this together, but when you look at some other comparisons at the percentages, it's very different. So let me start with the city of Saugatuck, which I recognize is a very different entity, so I've got some others that are more close comparisons. But when you look at, we spend, or approximately 30% of our revenue comes from property taxes or tax administrative fees. We're looking at closer to 70% for the city of Saugatuck, or closer to 60% for Grand Haven Township, which, yes, they are a much larger township, but they have some similar characteristics when it comes to, they are a full-time organization, they have full-time staff, and they are around a tourist area. I also pull South Haven Township, who has some closer numbers to ours in terms of percentages, but what I'd also like to point out is South Haven Township does not have a full-time staff, they do not employ a manager, and they are not open 5 days a week. So again, I do not do this to be an alarmist, but my understanding from the short time I've been here is the board and our residents expect us to operate more like these organizations, and yet we fund ourselves more like this organization. And I think it's something that deserves more research and for us to look into more. My initial impression is I don't feel like this is a sustainable practice, but it's something that just at the surface level today, I want to put on all your radar as we're beginning to talk about goal setting and priority setting moving forward. Again, I apologize if this catches any of you off guard. I put this together last minute today, but I think it's important we start to have this conversation, and I'm more than happy to attempt to answer questions and to look into it more moving forward. But going back, that concludes my report. I'll do my best to answer the questions.
Thank you, that was very good. Thank you, Griffin.
And I'd like to add another thank you to Dana for being sort of a multi-faceted liaison on this emergency. Spending time with, especially with Griffin, he spent time with some of us. I think we're going to be seeing more of you in the future. Just hang in there with this thing and do this. And just to your last point, I think that's a great item for the strategy session.
Okay, we're back to public comments. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make a comment?
Richard Donovan, Lakeshore Drive, Saugatuck Township. Just very quickly, on behalf of the Friends of the Trail, wanted to thank you for the time you took to get up to speed. I hope we were able to help you in that process and will continue to do so. Thank you for taking the action that we requested. We also appreciate your being cognizant of the constraints we have in terms of timing with this $200,000 pledge that is due by year end, subject to certain conditions. And finally, we're ready to jump in as soon as we can organize the effort that you've decided to proceed with, and we'll do everything we can to make this happen. Thank you. Thank you.
Dan Keller with the LMSA again, 2809 Lakeshore, Saugatuck Township. We had suggested that we expand the scope of the existing committee to focus on this issue. Is that something you guys are interested in? And there's a meeting on November 19th talking about emergency access and a path around the washout. Seems to be a little less important than figuring out how do we actually get ingress and egress to residents for their houses. Go ahead.
No, when you refer to the committee, do you mean the people that attended the first meeting?
No, there was a committee that was formed to look at the emergency access and the non-motorized path around the washout before the erosion issue started.
Right, exactly. And how many people are on that committee?
Brenda and I were on it. Actually, I would like to be taken on just for personal.
But you're the only two on it.
Right now.
How big's the committee now?
Well, there were.
As far as I know, there was two trustees,
Yeah.
there was, some homeowners, the planning commission, the township manager, the fire department, and Dana, I think you were also.
Would the board like me to respond? Can I-
Well, I'm still asking questions.
Okay.
He said he wants to increase something, I wanna know how big it is now.
No,
Unless you
it's
have
not
an idea.
increase the size, expand their, I mean, currently their focus is almost irrelevant.
I see what you're saying.
There's, but it's very much related, the work that's
Sure.
been done is
No, I get
how
it.
you get around there, but it's more than an emergency access and a non-motorized trail. It's basically an alternative road solution, both in the near term,
Yeah,
like immediate Band-Aid, and what's it gonna be going forward.
got it.
So it's
That kind of expansion.
expanding the scope of the community, not necessarily
Thank you for that
expanding the
clarification.
size of the community.
Is that, would anyone like to take my text on it? I just feel like I have some personal things that I just cannot, do one thing that I don't have to right this minute. So if anybody else would like to be on that committee,
I can step into your place. Yeah.
thank you, Brent, for
I misunderstood the
No.
statement.
Okay, yeah, if I can, please. So, yes, going back several weeks, staff was working with the fire district to schedule a meeting for November 19th. Circumstances have obviously changed in the last couple weeks, and I think whether we like it or not, the scope of that meeting is going to change. I've been in communication with the fire chief about how we can most productively use that time. I think discussing emergency access and access, which was, again, on a more specific level, was going to be the conversation to begin with, is still what that's going to be. So what I would just say, and again, I hope it makes the board confident in the direction moving forward, the same with the residents, is that's already being discussed about how we can most use that time most effectively, but the situation's changing so quickly right now, it's difficult to say with any definitiveness. But what I see as the direction moving forward is expanding that meeting on the 19th to include more of the impacted parties and continuing to discuss access. So I don't know if that helps, but I think what you're looking for is happening already.
That's good. I just didn't know if you guys needed to pass a resolution or whatever that directs that committee to have an expanded scope, or if they can just
They can do that.
expand its
It
scope.
was an informally developed committee to begin
Kind of
with.
up to the committee.
Okay, that's terrific.
We can endorse the idea to,
Okay. And with my remaining 30 seconds or so, we had also talked about in that meeting, having you organize a meeting of the homeowners to discuss the options. And I don't know if you need a resolution for Griffin to do that, or if Griffin can just do that, or if you're planning on doing that.
Again, if you'd like me to respond, from my perspective right now is we're not ready for that yet.
No.
I definitely see the value in bringing the residents in that area together to share their thoughts, but from the staff perspective, I would like to be able to give more direction or more guidance on where we're going, and again, unless the board feels otherwise and would like to direct me otherwise, I don't think we're ready for that step yet.
I think that sounds right. I know I'm not on the committee, but I would think the association should feel welcome to invite members that want to come from the association.
There will be people at the November 19th
Okay,
meeting, for sure.
that makes sense to me, because I know we're also, we're leading into a time when a lot of those owners aren't even in town.
Well, that's my point.
Right.
It's really important to know that several of the owners that are impacted do not live here.
Right,
They never live here.
right. They're
So,
not
and
part-time.
getting their input is really, really important. And understanding what the options are and being able to provide input on those options is a lot better than having it cooked up in a little dark room somewhere and then thrown at us and we're going, whoa, who'd you talk to?
And I think we've shown so far that we're trying to be as open as we can, but we don't have those options available to
No, I know,
present.
but the homeowners might be able to help you with those, because I know Dana personally has been calling me and other people.
Isn't that an area where the association could really help the
Well,
effort?
the association is 175
I know,
homeowners.
but you know who the people are that are affected.
But we're not all here, that's the.
We don't know who they are.
No, you do know, it's on your tax roll. It's obvious who the homeowners are. We don't know all of the homeowners that live on those. One of them lives in California, Chicago, there needs to be a ability for the homeowners to have a meeting together, organized by the township, which will encourage attendance.
We can get the information to you easily if we're provided with the addresses.
Well, the addresses are easy, it's everything north of the street number that.
But we can't necessarily track down people that don't live here, and we may not have any
You have
contact
them on
with
your
them.
tax rolls, they pay your taxes, you have to know who they are, we don't know who they are, you know.
They sometimes banks, though.
Yeah, they're not.
I mean, we can provide you their addresses if you want to reach out as well, it's all
I
set.
have their addresses,
Well, I don't,
but they don't live there. I have a mailing address for a house, they don't have mail forwarded from that house, that's not their address.
I see, you want to have the address for the tax bill, though.
We can provide that if we have it, if it's helpful.
Exactly, but what
It
we're
isn't
asking
always
is for the
accurate.
township to call the meeting for the residents, not the residents to call a meeting for the residents.
That's,
Whatever.
no, but that's, we've been asked that before, and it's difficult. It becomes a public meeting,
Oh, sure, it's a public meeting.
different
And you did
rules
it
apply, so.
In November of or whenever it was, in 2017, there was a public meeting that filled up the high school gym on this topic. So it is an important topic.
We know,
And
we can cooperate and help, but
Right.
we can't just say we're gonna put this meeting together, because that could be,
That was a critical next step coming out of the meeting we had last week, and it was agreed that would happen, and now it's not happening. So,
I don't know if we
the first thing.
agreed.
yeah,
I mean,
Who's
we
the head of the
agreed,
committee?
we had to talk
Yeah,
about
I
it,
don't know.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, but the emergency responder guy from the county said that was one of his 4 key objectives, was the meeting of the homeowners on this.
Well, maybe he
topic.
can help.
Maybe he could,
Maybe he can, I don't know. But
Is, I'm very interested and concerned. Does that group committee, whatever, is there a lead person, or is it still organic and forming?
this
Very
committee that was
organic.
formed, I can't tell you that, I assume the 2 trustees.
Like, it's organic?
Well, we
Yeah.
started with the washout.
Yeah,
original-
no, I know,
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
just curious.
So I think it's gonna completely change, really, because
So there's not.
Maybe it'll solve that problem
Right,
when they
and
figure
maybe
out what
someone
to
new
do
will
with
get
the
involved
next
and-
door,
yeah.
Well, yeah, well, that's all.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment?
No, you're past your road.
Yeah, sorry.
So Danberg, I just appreciate the acknowledgement. 2 points kind of on drinking out of a fire hose. John brought up that you guys have been in office for a year, and I appreciate all that you're doing as a resident, for the township. I think you guys are really taking on a lot of issues, and trying to do that, and I appreciate Griffin's efforts, trying to drink out of the fire hose that's coming at him. The other point on that is, with Lakeshore Drive, I think that right now is in a bit of a drinking out of the fire hose stage for a lot of people, and so, I know a lot of people want action quickly on it, but getting just to wrap everybody's heads around the issues and what's going on and the different agencies involved. It was really impressive to attend that meeting, and to find out how quickly and how much planning goes into emergency response from a county level as well as our local level, so, I think it's just important to ask for some patience from the homeowners a little bit as everybody kind of figures out, a response to that. You know, the lake was high back in the late 80s, and there was a lot of severe erosion in there. You know, and the road has been maintained since then, and so, I think everybody's kind of watching what happens very carefully right now and trying to figure out, the road commission in particular, you know, some of the next steps and related to the road, the risks there, so, you know, they haven't deemed the road unsafe by any means at this point, because it has been like that for 30 years, it's just in an active state of change, and so everybody's trying to figure that out.
thank you. Any more public comment?
John Skipper, 3438 Riverside Drive. Thank you very, very much, and happy anniversary. It's our anniversary too.
Happy
Exactly 1 year ago, we had said, this might be possible. I know that Griffin's told you not under any obligation to change anything, but we're thankful that you're gonna at least consider taking part in the discussion. We'd like to be involved in any discussion. Personally, we think that we should be rated with an REU that's similar to a convent because we have all female plants. Just throwing it out there. And if you, it's just based, special attention to attachment 3, where it shows just the amount of the facility that's actually, not going to be hooked up to the sewer system. We have our own water treatment plant inside. We treat the water when it first comes in the building, and then we recycle approximately 90% of the water that is used, and about 80 to 85% of the building is off the circuit of the sewer because of our job. Our job is capturing carbon dioxide, causing a lot of water to transpire through plants and buildings and cannabis plants, which unfortunately are still rated as a class 1. But we'd like to have Dane have more options to be able to bring our costs down. We've got to be able to compete in this marketplace. We can't have Michigan turn into California, where the black market is overwhelming the state's public market, because the fees for getting involved in the legal growing of cannabis were so high that they prohibitively kept costs too high, and the black market is just beating their socks off, and revenues to the state are less than half anticipated. Colorado's done a better job. We think Michigan can do a better job. We also need some relief on our side. Now, my ask for this evening is, because this is such a high dollar amount, 7% of our budget probably, our finance person is asking if we would be able to pay for the assessment fee as it is, but have it placed in escrow while it's under determination that we could possibly get a lower hookup rate. Request.
Thank you.
Do we,
Well, we'll get back to you.
What's that?
We'll get back to you on that. You might want to put that in writing, though, that would be helpful. Just the escrow.
Tonight.
Anybody else would like to speak at the public comment section? Going once? Hearing no one, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the November 6th, Saugatuck Township meeting at 8:31.
Thank you.
I wonder if that They were trying to, I know they were trying to.